Good morning from Easier Habits Live. There's a kind of pause there as I collect my thoughts. This is actually my second attempt at a video entitled One Thing a Coach Can't Help You With. Partially because I realized in the first thing it's not really the one thing, but really it's the sign that you're dealing with something where you need more than a coach. And I will give you a little bit of background. So that's me and my wife, we're working towards the end of June having a repeatable business model with for her with X amount of clients at a certain amount of rate, and kind of a goal that she had adopted or we talked about was her having a complete full-time independent income, right? That could support the family if necessary, although I plan to work. And actually, kind of what we're doing was both trying to build our own businesses to see who could sustain the family first, and then figure it out from there. And we got to the spot, an exciting spot, where we had something that worked for her. She'd done a presentation that she got a number of inquiries from and a client. And basically, maybe that was not the right thing, but I think we were pretty close to a repeatable business model. And the clear next step was like, all right, just give that talk that you gave in as many places as you can. And, as we do it more, we can start tweaking the messaging or, see the difference, between this group or that group to kind of figure out your target avatar and how to get more clients. But I noticed two things, which were, one, Meg was dragging her feet at doing outreach to get more of these talks, and two, when she was signing up people, she was signing them up at 2/3 or whatever the rate she would need to be able to get a full-time income with a full-time client load. And so I asked her about this, and she said, well, I just kind of want to do things my way. I don't want to do this repeatable model thing because every time I think about it, it freaks me out, it stresses me out, and then I just stop, shut down. And so that was that was a big sign to step back. And so what I had been trying to do is get her closer to a stated goal of making a full-time income at her business. And it's not that we would have had to do just these exact steps, but a lot of the problems that were arising for Meg were, I don't want to charge that much for my services, and the other one that I don't feel like I'm enough to do outreach or confident enough to do outreach. And when I really realized, all right, this is a bigger problem, right, than what I had taken on with our little coaching arrangement every morning, was when we offered, all right, well, you've already done some outreach. How about we train a virtual assistant to do outreach for you? And so you don't even have to do the outreach. You're just fielding inquiries from this person who's already done the outreach for you, and even that didn't get her excited. So this was not just I don't like doing outreach. This was something more around money, and I could have dived into that, but one of the challenges of coaching someone in your family is not doing it in a business arrangement for free is sometimes when they tell you to step off, you just have to step off because people have personal boundaries in families. And she didn't say that in so many words, but she also was not enthusiastic about diving into, well, why are you not charging more? Or why don't you want to do the outreach, right? And so at the end of the day, one thing a coach can't help you with is defining what you want. Now, I think there are things of what she wants that she does know, and so it's never, for those of you who are afraid to go out on your own and try and be an entrepreneur, you always learn, right? She learned that she really did want to work specifically with Japanese people. She particularly likes and has had a lot of success working with female entrepreneurs in this particular age category, so she learned a lot about who she liked to work with, and she has some things she likes to do. Unfortunately, being an entrepreneur, there's also the business side of things. And so what she would really like is if she was just a coach and then someone paid her a full-time income while taking on all the business side of things. Um, and wow, I had my own business to start, and so I wasn't about to jump in and just start actually fully running hers, like for instance doing the outreach for her. Plus I was wary to do that, even as a husband, not necessarily just as a coach, but which I never do that as a coach, run somebody else's business, but even as like a husband, I was leery of stepping in, just because again I don't know where the boundaries are, right? If she doesn't want a virtual assistant doing it, is will me forcing her into meetings about our progress with money, is that just going to be stressful to her? And on top of this, what we've been dealing with, and one of the reasons why it's been so long for me to get back, is Meg has had health issues, and that makes everything difficult. Not just what do I want to do, but what do I think I can do physically. And with this push to do a repeatable business model, one of the things that fell by the wayside was Meg's regular exercise, and that has had a huge impact on her health and probably on her mood and what she was talking about with depression. Obviously, like, that could be being depressed about running through this repeatable business model. Maybe it's not even just about that. It's just about the focus it's taken her to build this business, and and that has excluded developing her physical side of things. Has just left her in a place so depleted, so that she's not really in a position to run that business. And there's a part of me that wonders. I wonder that about this with myself. When I'm not feeling good and I'm not healthy, like, are these decisions actually reflective of like who I am, and would I make different decisions if I were feeling better? At the right time. So there's a lot of questions there, but at a fundamental level, a coach can help you explore what you want, but also, like, if you don't know what you want and you're not in a position to really pause and examine that, then a coach isn't really going to help you. So for instance, our goal was to help Meg get to a scalable, repeatable business model. But if like she doesn't want to do that, then why get a coach? Like, getting trying to scale her, if she has issues charging what she's worth for a full-time income, just getting a lot of clients plus a lot of pressure to increase her rates, it's just going to increase whatever stress there is more, for example, right? If you don't have the underlying understanding of, one, what it is that you're avoiding, I think that's almost sometimes as important as what you want, and then what you want, right? You have to define those things to some extent. And if those aren't really close to the surface, then maybe instead of a business coach, you need a different type of environment, either just more time to get to know yourself and experiment and then come back, or a therapist, or a coach who's really going to look more at helping you define who you are, which is not so much what I do. Although I try and facilitate my wife doing that, whenever I can, but I'm pretty open that it's not my wheelhouse. And plus, there are certain things where, as a coach, I might be very blunt and say, well, like, whether or not you want to keep coaching, this is where you are and this is what you need to do. And so if you want to see me again, then you have to answer XYZ questions. I'm not going to tell my wife if she ever wants to see me again, she has to answer XYZ questions. So it's a different relationship, right? So that ended. And in the past couple of months, we've just been trying to rearrange what it is we're doing and that relationship. If I had one big regret, not specifically just from this Meg project, but from the last 2 years, it's as like late 30-somethings with kids, both trying to start our own businesses with the health issues that we've been dealing with. That was overkill, and I think unwise. So we are now trying to move in a position where we can let Meg focus more on her health, where she continues to see clients and do work that she likes, but she's not under pressure to like scale that and show up all the time as XYZ. She has a handful of clients, and also when something happens, when there's health issues, it's a amount that she can reschedule, whereas if she were working full time, that would be a nightmare every time she had health issues flaring up. So that is one thing a coach can't help you with, which is really diving into the work of what it is you want and what it is you're avoiding. That's a little bit more in the realm of therapy. There might be some coaches who are kind of more towards that work for you, but generally I would say, like, yeah, especially if you have something like a real psychological hang up, like I'm afraid to charge what I need to charge to run my business. Like, that's probably something where it's like, that's more of like an emotional thing, right? So cognitive behavioral therapy is a great form of therapy, that has shown, not all therapies have shown this, but that has shown some powerful impacts on people's, happiness levels and resilience and whatnot. So that's definitely an example. And what's the sign that you're running into this? It's the sign that instead of being excited about your coaching, you are dragging your feet, you're depressed about it, or like week to week you're not meeting commitments. It could also just be the sign you don't have the right coach. And like very many services, like doctors, like coaches, consultants, etc. Very often you have to try a few out before you find one that really resonates with you. And so that's also true. I might just not be the right coach for Meg. And there might be a coach that would be really good at helping her identify, where her blockage is, and where her motivation is, where her goals are. Where my focus is a lot more like business and strategic. Like how do we get, if you have a goal of building your business to X, how do we break that down? What do we focus on first? How can we break that into week-to-week chunks? How do we pivot? How do we make sure we're getting the most learning out of each activity that we do? So instead of spending years developing your services or products, you're doing it in a matter of months, that kind of thing. Very, very different emphasis. And while I will dabble in communication and psychology because those things come up, where that's a ginormous detour instead of a small speed bump, I generally refer people elsewhere. So if the big block is something kind of more emotional, psychological, relationship, etc., then you probably need someone with more specialty and experience right in that. If it's just like, oh, my life feels a little unbalanced and I've had a problem focusing on work today because of, this miscommunication with my wife, or like, life issues, I can help people balance that so they feel like they can devote themselves to their business but still have some quality time with their kids, and adjust that week to week, because when there's no such thing as like a perfect static week work-life balance, right? Like, I run into that a little bit and I help people with that, and then when that's like the major thing holding them back, that's about where I'm like, okay, probably you want to go to someone who specializes in that, in the same way that if you went to one type of specialist, a dermatologist about skin reactions, eventually they might refer you to someone, if your issue is not just skin but like allergic reactions, they might refer you to someone who does allergies. Anyway, so I hope that's helpful, right? If you've been thinking about coaching in your own life. In my own experience, one of the things that helps me that I actually do is I have a friend who is ambitious, who's the kind of person that reminds me of I want to live a more fulfilling life, who's empathetic but willing to call me on my issues and also challenge me to do better. And it can be difficult to find the right friend for this, but if you can find the right friend, I get some of that out every week, working on some of these emotional issues. And so that's another thing, is like, maybe it's therapy, or maybe you just need time to explore and the right friend to help you process that. So that's another avenue you can take if what you're finding is not that you don't have the steps to get successful. It's that you have this resistance to doing them. You're not repeatedly showing up. Then maybe there's some kind of mindset or character stuff that you need to work on yourself, some of your own psychology that you need to work on yourself so that you can show up consistently where you want to be. And once you do that work, you might find that you are in the perfect state to move forward with your plans as you had them before. I doubt Meg is ever going to move away from coaching people, especially coaching Japanese people in English, and not just grammar, but like English that meets their goals. She loves doing that, so I have a hard time imagining like that's the issue. So it may very well be, as she sorts out her health and other things, she comes back to a way of doing this successfully. But on the other hand, part of that work of going back to the drawing board, and really working on the psychological, emotional part of who you are, might result in something different. And so I am in an interesting spot where I have done that over the past couple of months. We've had to think about like, all right, what does our life look like, and what do we want to do, and kind of stepping back. I had, for the last couple of years, there's this part of me that wondered, I thought actually Meg might get to a full-time business ahead of me because she was ahead in, the work that she was doing. She'd had clients, she was working with clients. There was some change and, she wanted a higher percentage of, more specifically Japanese clients at a higher rate. So that was a thing, but she'd already been working on that, whereas like I was, a couple years ago, even while she was still doing language coaching, I was like trying to figure out who I wanted to be as a coach. I even briefly thought about like, well, should I get a marriage and family therapy license and be more relationship-y or more business-y? And so that, so this has been a series of rethinking, and pretty much the whole time I've been a coach, I've been trying to refine not just how I do what I do, but like what is it I want to do. And there's been this process of narrowing, focusing on business, focusing on engineering and business, and that didn't fit quite right, just in part because I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of money in engineering departments and business and whatnot, but most people think they're better than average at whatever they do. So like most drivers think they're better than average, even though it's statistically impossible. And that's my experience actually with most managers and like mid-level leadership in companies, that everybody does something unique, or they feel is over the top. And because they do this one thing, they think they're better than average. Very often because they have a lot of blind spots they don't see, and they're not aware that everybody has the one or two things they do, the one or two times they go out on a limb for somebody that makes them feel like a good leadership, even if they're not consistently doing that, right? Everyone has this kind of narrative about themselves. So that means, trying to sell somebody who thinks they're a better than average leader on more leadership training was, not ideal. And there's ways around that, right? That I see as an outsider to some extent. I was an engineer for a long time, but I was also an English major. I was someone who liked emotions and communications and people skills, whereas most engineering managers were engineers who are self-selected to be people who are not comfortable with emotions and prefer, code to people. And so as an outsider, I could kind of see all of the gaps that your typical engineering leader will have, that the patterns that I see repeatedly. Avoiding conflict being one of the biggest ones is they let big problems grow into toxic situations because they're uncomfortable with things like accountability and addressing problems head on. I remember in one situation with a leader where someone wasn't doing work and that was reported, and they didn't even respond. They said, I'd take a look at this later, and that was it. And they didn't respond for several days because, right, that conflict aversion, they weren't comfortable diving into that conflict and their that difficult situation. And so their, human brain that always wants to take the easiest path was like, well, maybe this doesn't really require an immediate response, that someone's not doing their work repeatedly over a month. Maybe I can just sit another month and watch that out, or sit a week or whatever to watch that out. And so, and that's, one example. I've just seen that a lot of times where, where they're conflict averse. Actually, one company I went to, it was exciting that they recognized that, and they had me teach how to have conflict seminars because they realized that was a big problem that was like a big gap in their culture as engineering culture, that people were saying what other people thought they wanted to hear to avoid conflict rather than hashing out their true opinions and getting the best, getting all the ideas on the table so they could choose the best, right? And so there's a purpose to conflict. So like I could see that as an outsider, but for an insider, that's just how it is. They don't even, it's like the old fish in the water thing that one fish says to another fish, "How's the water?" And the second fish says, "What?" Because as an engineer with other engineering managers who are all conflict averse, they don't see there's a problem because everyone's that way, right? So this is all a very long way of saying that I realized that target audience was not my right audience, right? There's a lot of friction. I had more success working more with startups. And so new companies, someone who's starting something new and trying to get that out there very often comes into heavy roadblocks. And so they realize they're not enough. They're looking for more support. And they're looking for a way to speed up this really slow and painful process of like finding the right fit for your company, or making massive change in their companies, massive cultural changes in their companies where they're underperforming, etc. So and that was exciting, and to me that also just resonates more because rather than trying to weed out people from all the managers who are kind of the people showing up to their daily jobs and just trying to get by, to identify like the people who are really into leadership and improving as leaders, working with a group of people that like already are hungry to be better, hungry to improve, more ambitious, etc. So that was a step in the right direction. But I've been continuing to refine that, and with this stepping back and just being like, all right, well, I am in charge of this long term. I love helping. I still like building stuff that helps make people's life easier. I still like leadership. I still like working with people who have an entrepreneurial bent, right? Who are coming up with cool new ideas and building new things. And so I have some projects, including a potentially upcoming project where I could potentially be helping a group that is building I'm not going to give too many details, but like financial apps that help, small business and maybe some not small business, maybe a couple of Fortune 500 companies in terms of like getting better insights into their company and their financials. So that is exciting because I've worked with companies in financial modeling, and I have some ideas of like how you can help get people automated insights that scale. It's not the same as having a coach, but at the same time we could do so much better with the software we have, and there's some pretty simple formulas that can help you identify where your profitability is, like what would be most profitable for you to work on. In fact, I have like a series on that, and a free financialing sheet. I will put that in the link below. I'll link that series if you're kind of curious about some of the work I've done on that in the past. So that's exciting, but looking at long term, like where am I at? Because it felt like I still didn't quite have the right niche with entrepreneurs. And so I've been taking a step back and cutting a lot of things out, getting big full-time contracts with companies starting new products, kind of the more entrepreneurial bent, rather than trying to get a roster of 10 to 20 individual one-off clients, which means I'm freed up from a lot of my previous marketing time. And during this period, one thing I've tried out that I've wanted to do for a while and I just hadn't tried it out, partially because I was to a certain extent chasing money, engineering departments that have lots of money, chasing consulting with them. But one thing I have been dipping my toes in is interviewing creatives, and that interviewing specifically locally in Austin, sci-fi and fantasy creatives. And so this is essentially like adding a couple additional layers of niching down. So I'm not just helping people in business, and I'm not just, I think there eventually will be an engineering component to it, although that's later. That will come. I'm a big fan of solving problems and testing and verifying that you've solved something and then scaling solutions that work rather than jumping right into the app. But niching down from like business and business leadership in general to successful entrepreneurship to creative entrepreneurship to creative entrepreneurship in sci-fi and fantasy spaces of creators with followings under this right now creators under this level of following, etc. And so I got very specific. And one of the interesting things that happened when I niched down and I niched down not on the factors where I thought I would get the most money per se. I'm niching down on the factors where I feel like that I really connect with people and I feel like there's a lot of pain. And so I did run some napkin numbers in terms of like, well, if I built an app in this space that cost, this much in a regular subscription, would I be able to support myself? And, ran the numbers and I'm like, yep, I could. So it is a business and there's enough to start a business. But one of the things I noticed that was completely different for me was that outreach became very exciting. Because outreach now consisted of me finding local people that I know I could meet in person and geeking out about their work. And I'm a geek, right? I'm a sci-fi fantasy geek. So, able to connect on the jokes they have on their website or, cool piece of art or, download their book and start reading it. And so my outreach was like, hey, love this from your newsletter and I'm checking out your book. Could I interview you? I'm trying to build a network of creatives here in Austin. And what I found is, one, I was more excited to do that. I think my outreach was more authentic because of that. Because of that, the first several people I interviewed got back to, or I did outreach for, got back to me. And so I had like a 60%, I just did shot off 5 emails one week and I got a 60% response rate and that ended up in 2 interviews. And I'm like, wow, this is so much easier than trying to get engineering leadership in, trying to reach out to engineering leadership. And then I had the interviews and the interviews were fantastic. So I really enjoyed that. Now, I have a lot to learn in this space. So with engineering, kind of what I had been doing and am doing was going where there's lots of money, which is not necessarily bad, but is not necessarily where most of your energy, natural energy, is going to be focused. And then also, I'd been doing what I know. And in reaching out to creatives to help them with their business, I do have some skill sets in terms of like product development and strategic thinking and entrepreneurial thinking that will be helpful. But like initially, I'm not going to be able to tell them how to market and grow their communities, which is like growing that community and working with their communities where I'm really interested. But I have a lot to learn there, and hence I'm doing interviews and not starting a company or doing an app anytime soon, right? So I'm just at the beginning phases of this. But I noticed that there is a lot more energy in it for me and from the people I'm reaching out to, which is a signal that it's a much better match. So I talked earlier a little bit about, how Meg ran into a wall of either, having a difficult time defining what it is she wants or, having a difficult time working around what it is she's trying to, things she's trying to avoid. Where for me, the question really that has been helping me is who do I want to work with? And I can be kind of flexible. There's room to learn. And there's models for working with people outside your area of expertise depending on what you're doing, right? And so this is kind of an area where it's like coaching somewhat helps with this. And I don't have like a full-time coach. I've had a coach from time to time. Right now I have a friend that I do a weekly check-in with who's helped me think aloud and provide feedback as I have, tried out various niches and various, coaching areas. And so, coaching can help with this a little bit. This one, who do you want to work with, right? As long as you can like work the process, right? As long as you have a direction of what you want and you're trying things out week to week and learning, and not kind of getting stuck, hitting a place where it's like, I don't want to do the work. I want X, but I don't want to do the work to get X is probably a sign you actually don't want X. You want something else that you're not, willing to admit yet. Like that's where you get stuck, right? But, if you want to help people grow their businesses, as I do, right? That's still a very big field, and a coach can help you niche down and recognize maybe that's what you need to do. But for a lot of people, also, this is one of, I think, the borderline things, or at least as far as I'm concerned, I more help people who know what they want in their business and who their target audience is, refine that somewhat and iterate. And I have helped people outline avatars and then, help them realize like, wait, I don't actually want to serve that person. And like, that I was thinking was in my audience. So like I've done some refinement of that. So who you want to work with can be a critical question. And that is something I feel like is a little bit easier to work with a coach, work with friends or whatever, journal and figure that out. But the sign of this one, I think, is the easier outreach. And the enthusiasm around that, it's very, very different doing this, knowing that for my first couple of interviews, both the people wanted to be on my email list. So from day one, I was starting with people interested in this venture. Now, I kind of teased, if you find an area that you want to work in or a group you want to work in where you don't have a lot of experience, there are ways of diving in with that. And so one of the things that I'm doing is, I'm taking the inventory. What are the skills I do have? Well, I have the skills to do outreach, right? I can network. And so just by interviewing with me and saying, yeah, they'd like to hear as I have a network, I'm basically making their networking life easier. I'm providing that as a free service, right? And that's a pretty good offer for creatives. Like, hey, I'm going to build a high quality local in-person network of creatives, not some like flaky online group with thousands of people who don't participate, but like an actual functioning interpersonal network where you can make real connections and connections with people that you can meet up, etc. Right? That is essentially my value proposition, especially since I'm starting it for free. People are willing to sit down and have coffee with me, or in my case, herbal tea. And what I'm going to build with this network is what I'm finding is, all right, this one person might have success on Twitter where someone else has no success, but this other person is really good at conventions and selling their stuff at flea markets, right? They're really good at in-person stuff where people can share their best practices and or do cross promotion. Like, hey, maybe I'll help promote you on this, platform and get you some more followers if you help me set up, I'll help, get you set up on Twitter if you help me run my first convention stall or, whatever it is you have, right? And so that kind of thing, what I'm selling them is I will build this high quality network for you. And and the evidence of that is my willingness to meet in person and ask about their problems and showing that I can understand their problems and sharing insights from other interviews, etc. So there are ways, for instance, like I don't know yet how to market. As I build this, I have one value proposition, which is like networking for them and like moderating the community, etc. as I build this network, I will get exposed to a lot of those best practices, and I'm actually actively asking people if I could essentially be like a free intern for like short duration projects, so I could try out building their communities and see what works or what doesn't work. And I mean, they like the idea of anyone trying to help them build their online media. So like, again, like, and for free, you know, even if it's for a short while, they're willing to do that, and that would help me get more exposure. And then at the time that, you know, I have some of these best practices, right, I can start to automate those things and scale them into an app. And like I said, I ran some numbers just to see, you know, could I make a viable business on this? And one last thing I'll say about finding what you want to do and who you want to work with is knowing up front whether you really want to build, like, as an entrepreneur, a unicorn company, or if you're fine with, like, you know, a lifestyle business that's you know, your size and may or may not, you know, need to grow. I'd love to have a big impact, but for the most part, I'd love to have a deep impact on people. So, like, I don't need a unicorn company. And so when I ran the numbers, you know, I just ran the basic numbers to see, like, all right, could I make enough money to support myself and whatever additional systems or personnel I would need to run some of these very loose ideas, you know, this loose type of idea. Yep, I could do that. So that's good enough for me, and I kind of understand that, you know, for some hyper ambitious people, like, you know, for some people, like, the being seen by billions of people, having something used by billions of people in and of itself is, you know, something to develop a sense of worth or value from. And I just don't, actually. Like, that'd be nice, that'd be cool if I was helping more people, but that doesn't seem as real to me as the impacts, for example, I've had one-on-one coaching and the insights, you know, people have had changing their lives. And so, like, having 1 billion people subscribe to my app, I hope it does them good, but for whatever reason, it's just not as real to me as helping out individuals, which is why an in-person network here, starting with that first, where I am most strongest and have the most energy, is a great place to go, great place to build from. So, if you're watching this, a couple of takeaways for yourself and a couple of takeaways about the channel. One, if you don't know what you want, or you're avoiding what you say you want, there's probably some deeper psychological work to do, some working on, you know, teasing out your emotions, etc., or being more honest with yourself about what it is you want, working through emotional blocks, etc. And a business coach is not necessarily going to help with that. You know, I will help you identify what you're feeling, but if it's like consistently, I don't want to work on this business, then, like, all right, you probably should sue somebody else. And in one case, I did help a client come to that conclusion that, like, actually what you really want is to be working on something else, and, you know, sell your company, move on to your next thing. And as moving on to your next thing means, you know, if it's not a business right away, well, like, see me when you start a business. And it's, you know, sad to, you know, say goodbye to clients, and I still check in from time to time. But you know, like, it's a good place to realize, like, that instead of, like, optimizing your income from a job or, you know, a business that's making you miserable, I'd much rather you made the life decision to move on and figure out what it is you need to fix in your life, whether it's, you know, physical health, emotional health, whatever. And those two pieces, right? What you want and what you're avoiding, both pretty critical to have a handle on. Even if you feel like you're making progress in your business right now, like, I highly recommend journaling in general, and meditation. Both have such huge benefits, you know, meditating to clear your mind, or, you know, as well as meditating on how you're feeling, what, being really present with your feelings. Great work. Journaling has fantastic benefits. So like, I highly recommend that for anyone. It's not just if you're stuck. I've also been doing that right now for myself, which has been fantastic. My accountability partner has mentioned that I have lightened up a lot, probably both as a result of me looking at what I'm avoiding and what I've been avoiding and what's been kind of calling some of the shots and decisions that have been making me less happy. It's more like the blinders, right? Not checking out interesting projects because I want to do this for money or whatnot. That's been really helpful and that's opened me up. So I recommend that for everybody, but like, if that's the major thing preventing you from taking action, then definitely you need to take some time to focus on that. And then another thing that is important is who you're working with, and it does make a huge difference that like narrowing down by a couple more factors, and especially like a couple more factors that really align with what I'm naturally excited about. Like I'm a sci-fi fantasy geek, and so it's really fun to talk to people who are doing fantasy, fantasy art or sci-fi novels, etc. So I geek out so hard, and that making the outreach easier and making the contacts that I do make that much more exciting. Like it is like 10x more motivation, natural motivation, which is just thrilling, right? So those are some takeaways from this whole experience. But a couple of other takeaways from this channel is we're not going to be doing daily morning Meg check-ins. That's one of the things we're cutting back to give Meg more space. And I am still trying to figure out where I'm going to take this channel. I have this project for creative entrepreneurs, right? I could continue it just on this channel. I could do interview updates on another channel or another newsletter, but like do a behind the scenes business on this channel. And I'm not 100% sure where I want to take it. I'd love to hear from you guys, some of my subscribers. So I do have 124 subscribers. If there's something you guys want and you're watching these and you're engaged, let me know and I will see if I can provide that. But if you guys are pretty much checked out by this time, not reaching the end of the video, then probably I will just move on and create a new, more focused channel rather than this general business channel around the how to grow communities as a creative. A piece of content, I don't know whether it would go here or there, for example, that I've been thinking of today, what was interesting is how to live your life like it's a work of art. And I think there's a number of things of the way artists approach art that has like a really interesting general application to to life in general. And I'm thinking particularly like visual arts, as I've been experimenting clumsily with watercolor and learning a lot. So that's an example of something I might do in addition to behind the scenes. But again, if there's not that much energy behind it here, then I might just build a vlog or blog or something for creatives building their communities and really focus my content entirely on that. So yeah, anyway, this is a long video. Thanks for sticking with me. Again, if you want more content, it's on you to comment below, because I've learned a lot from this journey. I've learned a lot from this coaching journey, trying to grow the coaching channel and actually finding out, like moving from a model of, smaller clients engagement, 1 hour a week, to large scale engagements, which has been so much better for my bottom line in terms of a whole lot less time, a whole lot more billable hours and a whole lot less time marketing, although you have to worry about gaps in between them. I, have learned a lot about marketing and building a repeatable client acquisition model from this project with Meg. I'm excited that we pretty much got to the 5-yard line. And there's a part of me that's just shaking my fist like, we got so close. But I still learned a lot regardless. And a lot of that stuff that I hope to include in my next venture. If you are a creative, right? If you are a content creator, artist, or author in the sci-fi or fantasy domain, especially if you're in Austin, look me up. Even if you're not, eventually I hope that I will find a way to bring either start multiple networks and find people to run them so that different areas can have their local network and kind of just use our pattern to build a powerful network, or find a scalable way eventually, an app, etc., that can facilitate this on a bigger scale than Austin. But yeah, so if that's a project you're interested in, then reach out to me and we'll chat, see if I can keep you in the loop on the new project. Oof. Yeah, and until next time, whenever that is, make big changes one small